Hi, my name is Emily, and we will be doing a TED Talk today discussing motor control. So first, just want to let you know what the lecture will be on. Again, it'll be the review of the basic mechanisms of the how and why we perform simple and complex movements. So today we're going to go over our mind-body connection, how we plan and initiate movement, also execution mechanisms, then how do we monitor our movements, as well as our movement models. So, to start off, we'll talk about the mind-body connection, which is how the mind and the body work together to create our movements. A big important topic is our motor behavior. So our motor behavior is the nature and cause of human movement. Motor is a physiological process, while behavior is a psychological process. That then leads us to sensation and perception. As we all know, we have 5 senses. We have touch, taste, smell, hearing, and what's our last one, Bucket?
Seeing.
Perfect, thank you. Our perception is then how we take this stimuli and see it based on our past experiences as well as our memories. So, Bucket, what do you see in this picture?
I see 2 females looking at each other.
So, from your past experiences and memories, you see the 2 females. Is there anything else that you see?
No.
Other people, when they see this video or slide, can also see the 3 vase that also outline the 2 girls. So that is how our perception works, since our senses are the same, but the way we perceive this is different. Cool. So, as I said, our mind is the physiological or the psychological process. This is our perception, memory, how we learn, what motivates us, our emotions, our cognition, while on the other hand, our body is more of the physiological processes. So this is our musculoskeletal system, our peripheral nervous system, and even movement outcomes. So, for some examples, this is how they influence each other. So how the mind influences the body is that from past experiences, it will shape how we react or perceive a situation. On the other hand, our body can influence our mind. So certain body positioning, like standing upright, can make you feel more powerful. So our body positioning can actually influence the way we perceive certain stimulus. Next, we'll go on to planning and initiating movement. So this is how our mind and body work together in order to provide movement information. Basically, we're going to be using the nervous system for this one. The nervous system is split into 2 parts: the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, which is everything else. Neurons are the nervous system's way to communicate throughout the entire system. Our peripheral nervous system can then be split into sensory and motor divisions. So, this is how everything goes down. First, our sensory neurons pick up a stimulus, such as seeing a ball moving towards you. It then takes this stimulus up through the spinal cord to the brain, where it plans and initiates a certain movement. The brain then commands the movement, sends these signals back down through our motor neurons, which then activate the muscle in order to perform the movement. We can also use feed forward and feedback control to help us continue with a movement. So our feed forward is by doing commands that originate in the major command structures and proceed to target the movement. These are minimally influenced by our sensory feedback and are also considered open loop. Our feedback regulates and changes the nature of a feed forward command. So we can think of an example as knitting. The first time you knit, you perform a movement, which will be your feed forward movement. But your feedback is your visual systems working to see what type of movement you're making and then correcting it and fine-tuning it along the way. That way you become more efficient in your knitting process. Next is execution mechanisms. So we have a motor unit. This is a lower motor neuron and all the muscle fibers that innervate it. This controls force output, such as recruiting, rate coding, and coordination. Nervous systems take into account properties of muscle when planning to activate their muscle. Our neuromuscular mechanics. So we have muscle tissue, which is excitable, that responds to electrical impulses, which how our muscle tissue has 3 mechanical properties: extensibility, elasticity, and contractility. 3 models for optimal force output and movement include our length-tension relationship, our force-velocity relationship, as well as the stretch-shorten cycle. So, where did we go? Cool. Next, we'll go on to monitoring movement. This is how our body can influence learning. So, our sensory systems are part of the peripheral nervous system, which we use receptors, which are our organelles that detect stimuli from the environment. This includes muscle spindles, proprioceptors. We have tons of different types of receptors, taste receptors, everything. And our visual systems, which are actually the most dominant feedback information from the brain. So let's take back to the example of knitting. We use our vision in order to provide feedback on how to make our movements of knitting more efficient. Also, our visual systems use a certain property of exteroreceptive information, which means it's one of the only senses that actually allows us to interact with things that are outside of connecting with our body. So for example, in order to taste something or know how something tastes, you actually have to physically put it in your mouth. Well, you can watch something that's super far away, like a TV, and feel the stimulus without actually having to interact with it. So we do have two visual systems, that is the focal vision and our ambient vision. We use both feedback and feed-forward information in these systems. Focal vision. This is, you can kind of think of focal vision as focus. It's what you're consciously aware of and you're controlling it voluntarily. So it's used to identify objects and details in small spaces, and it's what you put your attention on. So in a game, this is probably the defender or the attacker that you're going to be focusing on. This also uses a key component of gaze, which is eye movements that allow you to maintain sharpness in light patterns. Our ambient vision is more of our interceptive vision. So this uses our gaze in order to anticipate what's going to be happening next. We do this unconsciously, and we also do this without focus. A large component in ambient vision is our optical flow, which uses the influx of changing light in order to help anticipate the speed in which objects are coming towards or going away from us. And lastly, we'll go over our movement models. So this is basically talking about the complexity of our mind and body's ability to create such complex movements that we see a lot of times in sports. Our movement models. So there's different types of ways that we have broken down how our brain works in order to organize itself. What we have found is that there actually hasn't been a real way that we know that the brain does it. Our brain is so complex that we can't figure out a correct method, so all we have are theories. These theories include hierarchical models, heterarchical models, as well as systems models. So today we're mainly going to be looking at system models. As I said before, we don't have a real specific way of how we run things. So we do have 3 consensus points in which we assume is this how the brain works. So the first is that our nervous system's prime concern is the movement outcome. That means that it wants to get the movement task done. It doesn't worry about how it gets it done, it just wants to get it there. Also, what is happening in the external environment and the internal body environment directly influences the movement outcome in planning. So what is going on around you, as well as what's going on in you, is going to directly affect what movements you make. And lastly, there's a presence of hardwired, preformed, and synergistic movements that form building blocks to make complex movements. So we have to learn how to walk before we can learn how to run. They're all building blocks and we store them like a computer does. So let's talk about the dynamic systems. They are systems that are dependent on one another and change in relationship to one another. So these involve 3 different types of constraints. Now constraints are obstacles that you have to overcome in order to create the movement. These include individual constraints, environmental constraints, and task constraints. Individual constraints are constraints within yourself. So it's your emotional state, if you have high blood pressure, if you are diabetic, these are going to affect the way you move. The environmental constraints include things that are going on around you. So, is it raining outside? Is it snowing outside? Is there a large crowd? It all depends. And lastly are task constraints. So these are the constraints that decide what task needs to be done. Are you a defender? Are you an attacker? You're going to move differently based on the task in front of you. Our brain also has self-organizing properties where it wants to maintain stability. So in order to maintain stability, it will organize itself to feel that control again. So from all of this, what we can confer is that our brain is so powerful that it is still no match to any humans or robots. We cannot make or manipulate any system to even be close to how well our brain can function and perform movements. Thank you. These are my references.